The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. Proverbs 20:27. You're having coffee with Conrad.
Conrad rocks!
Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Conrad. This is Conrad from ConradRocks.net. Rocks of revelation being poured out to you. I have a passion for you to develop a spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus. Now, today I started off with Proverbs 20:27. It hit me today as I was meditating. That verse just kind of rushed to me. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. Proverbs 20:27. Well, down here in South Mississippi, I'm about as south as you can get, down on the Gulf Coast, it rains all the time. Well, it has been recently. I've only been down here 3 months, but it rains. And then it rains, and then it rains some more. But we had a few days without rain, and this enables me to mow the lawn. Now, think about mowing the lawn for a second. I get a little weird. I know I get off in these rabbit trails, but hey, this is why you listen to me, right? We can think about mowing the lawn all we want. We can read the owner's manual about the lawnmower. We can watch YouTube videos of other people actually mowing their lawn to show us how to do it. But when I actually mow the lawn, I learn things like, hey, I'm going to sweat. Maybe I should pay attention to what type of clothing or what type of shoes that I should wear. I'm going to get tired. I probably need to lose some weight too, because this is for people that are in shape. And there's lots of things that I learn as I actually do the mowing of the lawn, and all the YouTube videos and the manuals, and things like learning how to keep the oil level up, or you'll just ruin your lawnmower. You got to keep the oil level up there, or you're going to kill your lawnmower. All that stuff starts making sense as we actually mow the lawn. It becomes experiential knowledge rather than just head knowledge. There's a difference between experience and knowing the text, head knowledge. For instance, people can describe an apple to me. They can tell me how the apple tastes. They can tell me the texture, how it feels in your throat before it goes down your esophagus and drops into your stomach. I can read about the health benefits of an apple on WebMD, or maybe buy some books. But until I actually eat an apple for myself, I'll never know what it actually tastes like. I won't have the experience. I won't know what the texture is like on my tongue until I actually bite in to the apple. After I get a few weeks or months of having an apple a day, then I may see what it means. By the proverb, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's something to that, right? But you're not going to know till you have that apple a day for a while. So it's also the same thing with the things of the Spirit. There's experiencing the things of the Spirit, and then there's simply reading about the things of the Spirit. We as good Christians keep reading about the Spirit of God. We keep reading that God is a spirit. We keep hearing that it's an absolute must to worship Him in spirit and in truth. But until we actually do these things, we're full of head knowledge. You see where I'm going with this? Now, the Apostle Saul was a man full of head knowledge. He knew the text, guys. He had it memorized. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He had a large volume of the text memorized. Okay? But we know that before Acts chapter 9, that he did not have the Spirit. Now, this podcast is about having a spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus, and I often point at Paul's life. You know, we can have the text in us, right, but not the Spirit. Even the devil, and he's had a lot more time to read the Bible than you and I have. Even the devil can read the Bible, and he can quote Scripture like he does in Matthew 4 and Luke 4. You know, he says, if you're the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it's written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time they dash thy foot against a stone. So we can see that even the devil knows the text. So there's something more, guys. There's something more. And Paul, after his encounter with God in Acts chapter 9, you know, on the road to Damascus, we can see that he was so moved about that encounter with the Spirit of God that in Galatians he writes about how he no longer confers with flesh and blood, but the Lord taught him directly. He spent time alone with Jesus. And Paul was being guided by the Spirit of truth. Jesus says the Spirit of truth will guide us into all truth. In Romans 8:9, Paul is so convinced of the importance of this spiritual relationship that he says this, but you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. Now, what does it mean to be in the Spirit, right? Then he continues on, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. So we're supposed to be in the Spirit, and the Spirit of God is supposed to be in us. Sounds like a spiritual relationship, right? And then he says this. Now remember, this is Paul's paradigm. He was not in the Spirit up until Acts chapter 9, right? On that road to Damascus, he had all this text memorized, and then he has an encounter with God, right? And then he's off in the deserts of Arabia learning from the Lord directly, and he writes Romans 8:9, now if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. Do you see how important Paul's emphasis is on the Spirit? This means that Paul had the text memorized. We can have it memorized, but we can not have the Spirit. The devil didn't have the Spirit when he had the text memorized. Paul, with the Scripture memorized, was killing Christians thinking he did God a service. He had a zeal for God, but it was in ignorance. People can be sincere about their relationship with God, but they can also be sincerely wrong. So rather than just reading about the spiritual relationship, we need to have the spiritual relationship with Jesus. We need to genuinely and sincerely seek the Spirit of God. If we're without a callous conscience towards God, we will get through to God. And when I say callous conscience, sometimes our preconceived ideas, our presuppositions can actually block us from getting towards God. But, you know, even God then, he can knock you off your horse. It often takes something like that. He'll knock you off your high horse down to the dust of the earth from which we were made, and he will get our attention. I wonder if Paul had like a praying grandmother or something. You know, I bet somebody was praying for him. But anyway, like the prodigal son, though, let's say the prodigal son, he headed in the direction of the Father. He just changed his mind and started going towards God. And you'll notice that the candle of the Lord, it searches the inward parts of the belly. As he was going towards God, the prodigal son was murmuring over things. He's like, man, you know, I did this, I did that, and this is what I'm going to say. So that's what was going on in his spirit. And keep in mind that Jesus is the way. I like to refer to that. And right now I'm working on the way as being like a compass heading. You may not have a roadmap to heaven, but you got a compass heading. You ever notice that when God speaks to the prophets, he just says, go this way. He doesn't really give them a roadmap. It's just like, go that direction. Abraham, get out of your country. Joseph, here's a couple of dreams. You see that that your family's going to bow down to you. That's just kind of a compass. It's not really a roadmap. It's a vision. Without a vision, my people perish. That vision, God gave Joseph a couple early in his life. They got him through prison, the pit, all the way to the palace. So it's not really a roadmap that God gives us. It's a compass heading. And when Jesus says he's the way, I think of Jesus, let's just go that direction. Like the prodigal son got up from the slop with the pigs and he just started heading the direction that he needed to go. And going back to that verse, the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching the inward parts of the belly. The candle, it's fire. Jesus baptizes with fire. And as we search for God, we find that we've got to do it spiritually. Then Jesus baptizes us with fire from this candle. It hurts the flesh, but it purifies the spirit. You ever thought about that? We let the Spirit lead the way as we draw near to God, and then the flesh somehow comes under subjection. God is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. So we need to seek him in spirit and in truth, right? If God's a spirit, we just need to keep moving towards God. Sometimes I like to think, it's kind of like a moth moving towards the light. There's a part where the flesh has to die, but it has no more dominion over us. We're spirit beings. God is the Father of spirits. And when I say God's the Father of spirits, I'm usually thinking of Hebrews 12:9, which contrasts the difference between the flesh and the spirit. And Hebrews 12:9 says, furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? So I'm not really sure where you are in your relationship with the spiritual God of the Bible, but it can't be limited to just Bible reading. That's what Paul was doing before Acts chapter 9. He was dealing with Gamaliel, and I like Gamaliel. Plays some really good parts in the movies. He looks like a wise guy. I wonder if he ever got saved in the end. Gamaliel seemed pretty cool. But at that point, he was just figuring out theology. And it was basically intellectual wrangling with the text. So we cannot just have this text knowledge. And one thing I've learned is that the Spirit of truth guides us as we work in the field. Like tasting the apple or mowing the lawn, those owner manuals and YouTube videos and all that stuff, they start making sense as we actually bite into the apple or we actually mow the lawn. It goes from head knowledge to experiential knowledge. We need to experience the Spirit. And this passage about the candle searching the belly, it becomes alive when you actually start sensing in your gut that there's something about truth in the belly. It's like you start learning, Jesus groaned on the way to the tomb before he raised Lazarus from the dead. There was power there, and he groaned within himself. I'm like going, that's something in the inward parts, man. It started in the belly. We learning that there are groanings which cannot be uttered, like Paul talks about in Romans 8. Remember I talked about Romans 8:9? He's talking about the Spirit. If you don't have it, you're in trouble. And in 8:26, he says, likewise the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. something going on in that inward part of the belly, man. We begin to learn, the navel. The belly button, it's like the part where we're fed as we're infants, before we're born. Something about that connection right there in the belly. We begin to understand a little bit more about why out of our bellies shall flow rivers of living water. Living water. We begin to learn why we get a check in our gut when danger's approaching. That gut feeling that people talk about. And I often think, whenever I had to go against my conscience, my stomach acid would increase. You know what I'm talking about? And this is why Tums and Rolaids was so popular. I believe a lot of people were having internal conflicts, and it manifested in their physical body as stomach acid. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you do, but if you do, you do, right? And once we have that initial relationship, that spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus, kind of like Paul, first you got to light the candle, right? That candle's got to be lit. And then you keep it going. God may start the fire like he did with Paul in Acts chapter 9, but it's the priests that kept the fire going in the Old Testament. They had to tend to it, And once we establish that spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus, that candle's on. It's with us. That candle is like the word of the Lord, which not only just burns in our belly, but it's a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. We can read about it or we can do it. I want to give a shout out to holyfirejapan.com, Stephen Barrett from holyfirejapan.com. I did an interview with him, and he's really got something awesome going on in his ministry, dcpi.org, which is Dynamic Church Planting International. People are getting saved and healed from a new podcast that he just started recently. It's pretty awesome. Check it out. It's Steve Tsunami on Twitter, or you can find him on holyfirejapan.com. I also want to shout out Krista Dupree Sparks. She is a thriver that loves Jesus, and the reason I'm shouting her out is she's been sharing the show, she's been commenting, and she's been rating the show. So I'm very grateful to you for doing that. And whenever you share, rate, and comment the show, no matter where you're listening, whether it's TuneIn Radio, iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever, Stitcher, and Spreaker. Spreaker's a great place to do that. Wherever you do that, it drives the podcast up in the rankings somehow. I don't know how that works, but it works. And then new people are exposed to the podcast. So please like, comment, rate, and share. God bless you. Thank you for being in my life. And until we meet again, dig deeper and go higher.
Dig deeper, go higher at ConradRocks.net.